it is 58 days to the 2023 elections, one of the most anticipated events that will produce a new set of leaders that will govern Nigerians for the next 4 years. With every election season comes issues of electoral malpractices and violence. Already there are complaints of some politicians buying PVCs from electorates and inciting violence with their rhetorics. The Independent National Electoral Commission has issued a stern warning to politicians involved in such acts to desist from it or risk 1 year imprisonment or a fine of 500,000 naira. INEC says it is committed to a credible, free and fair election and will do all within its powers to see to it that the will of the masses reflect in the outcome of next year's election. But joining us from our Abuja studio is the DG Tinubu Shetima Vanguard and former MD, Nigeria Communications Satellite Limited, talking about Engineer Timasaniyo Ahmed Rufai. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. And we have also joining us via Zoom a Nigerian UK-based chartered accountant and corporate governance professional, Olanrewaju Sharafa. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you so much, Veronica.
Thank you.
All right. If you can hear me, Olanrewaju, let me begin with you. Now, when you heard the warning given by INEC with regards to this matter of monetizing our elections, especially vote buying, and INEC says it is going to do all it can to uproot that out of our system, would you say that INEC is already on track, especially with the measures it has put in place, when you look especially at the matter of beavers coming to bear?
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. And it's very nice to be back to TVC. Let me start by paying a huge tribute to you and the team management for all that you do to sustain democracy in Africa. And back to your question regarding whether the INEC pronouncement around sanction or around fine for those who involve themselves in electoral violence or vote buying is the way to go. Well, it is important to remind ourselves that what INEC is doing is called institutional governance. So governance arrangement can, when we govern an entity or a nation, we can govern it in a different way. One way, including institutional way of governing an entity. What INEC is doing is trying to play their role in terms of, how to curb the national embarrassment that vote buying, vote bribery, violence into Nigeria at the international space. Now, the question is whether INEC is on the right track. The answer is very difficult to answer because, or the question is very difficult to answer because when you talk about violence, vote buying, you have parties to these activities. This includes the vote buyer themselves, the vote seller, who is the citizen, who technically sell out their freedom, and of course you have the vote broker. Now the question is, who are you going to sanction? How do you get the evidence? And how do you, of course, establish the fact that all of these things is happening? Even though you have the evidence, you can then manipulate the evidence, and then we just hear that on here and we don't hear anything anymore. But I think what we should be doing is that we should think beyond sanction when we talk about governance. Developed economy. Governance arrangement is now more principle-based. And that's why I asked the question, what is the National Orientation Agency doing when it comes to electoral violence and when it comes to, ensuring that citizens understand that they don't have to sell their vote, it is their right. And that's, of course, what determines their future. And when I looked at the website of the National Orientation Agency, it says that their role is to develop a Nigerian society that is orderly, responsible, and disciplined, where citizens demonstrate core value to honesty, hard working, and patriotism. And that's where the National Orientation Agency is coming. This is not about sanction. And therefore, I want to say that, yes, vote buying, vote violence, the alarming, of course, endanger the quality of our democratic institution. And of course, it put, election into disrepute, it of course potentially affects the way the international community perceives us as a nation. And we should move away from that and put simple: ownership is the base of power. When citizens sell their vote, it is not something that we should encourage, but it is not only by way of sanction. Organizations like the National Orientation Agency, where the DG, Dr. Garba Abari, head, should start to do something, making campaign to get citizens on track, making sure they know that it is their power, it is their right, and it is their freedom to vote for whoever without selling their votes.
All right, let me bring you in here, Engineer Ahmed Rufai, on this. Now, the point there is we've talked so much about vote buying and the dangers of it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of politicians on one hand who are doing the buying and the voters on the other hand who are doing the selling understand the dangers of this in our polity. Can you make us understand, as a way of creating enlightenment, what the dangers of vote buying is in an electoral system? Engineer Rufai, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. I was asking earlier.
Thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I can. I heard you. The issue of vote buying or vote selling are a situation whereby a candidate, who is not sure of winning an election on merit, who is not popular, try to use other ways, backdoor to power. I can give you a guarantee that in any election, once you have a credible candidate and you have a very popular candidate that is accepted by the people, he did not buy his way into power. Like the speaker said, this is something that we discourage. This is something that the law, the Constitution of Nigeria, has already prohibited, and various punishment, has been adduced to this act. Both the Constitution of 1999, the Electoral Act, the EFCC Act, and also the ICPC Act, prohibits, any act that is tantamount to bribery or tantamount to unlawful inducement. However, the politicians normally, that is what they call empowerment, that is what they call logistics. This is completely a different thing. But if you look at a candidate that is accepted, no matter how much an opponent try to subvert the will of the people, in most cases they fail. I have witnessed a situation whereby some candidates, because of popular acceptance, won election even from prison. So normally it is tantamount to mediocrity. It is tantamount to lack of acceptability that will make a candidate to resort to vote buying. As the convener of Tinubu Shetima Vanguard, it is obvious that everywhere that we've gone, with respect to the campaign that is ongoing, we have popular acceptance. We saw millions of people coming out for Tinubu and Shetima. The population in the hundreds of thousands, some areas up to 1 million people coming out. People right inside the stadium, far, far less than people that are even outside the environment, Kaduna, Lagos, and other areas that we have gone. It's obvious that we have popular acceptance. So the issue of votes being bought, definitely we are not part of it. It's not part of our ethics, because we are accepted across the entire gamut of Nigeria. You have a situation whereby the governors, at least 28 governors are by our side, by the special grace of God, and all their House of Representative members, they are with us. All their House of Assembly members are with us. The local government chairman, they are with us. These are all grassroots politicians that have their traditional followers. And when the time for election comes, they will all come out to make sure that their candidate of choice, which is Bola Ahmed Aswaju, and also Kashim Shettima, wins the election in a landslide. But in a situation whereby somebody is contesting an election, not one House of Assembly is behind him, not local government chairman behind him, or maybe he just have about 7 or 8 governors behind him against 28 governors, then you will understand that desperation will set in. And it is this desperation that says things that will now be tantamount to them looking for a backdoor, an alternative to get into power. But we have a clear pathway to power, which is obvious and everybody can see. Even the blind can see because they can feel it. They can feel the heat on ground. I can assure you that for us it's abhorrent, not part of our way, because we have popular acceptance. Our antecedents, our 2 leaders have antecedents. They've been in charge, as state governors in the past.
All right.
And the various states, they set the path towards the future. So it's not something that we should fear from the perspective of APC and from the perspective of our candidate, as well as Bola Ahmed Tinubu and also Kashim Shettima as his vice president. Okay, we will advise other parties to also go the same line, and let the ethics of good governance be established in the country once and for all.
Let's take the conversation now to Olanrewaju. There are those who say that this matter of vote buying or monetizing our elections is a recent thing in our democracy. If you look at elections in perhaps the 70s and early in the years of Nigeria's existence, we didn't have something like this. And I'm wondering for you, how did we get to this point of where we see people buying and selling their votes?
Thank you, Veronica. I think if you think vote buying or vote bribery is a recent thing, and what one should do is to go to Google and just type vote buying or vote bribery. And what you get is a result of up to about 173 million research that is currently going on when we talk about vote buying. Now, the reason vote buying is prominent in Nigeria is because of stomach infrastructure. Our leaders and those who represent us are not giving us proper account of the leadership or proper account or stewardship of their representation as leaders. And that's why the basis and the reliance of them coming back to office is pretty much based on how much capacity they have to buy a citizen right or to buy the citizen vote. What they need to understand, however, is that stewardship is the basis of governance. And that's what Professor of Governance Perpetrators said in 2019, that stewardship is the basis or the foundation of governance. I had Alhaji Timastani talking about the various structure they've got in their party to win election. I do agree, and it's correct that you need the structure to win election. But the question is, how do we see this structure? Are we seeing this structure as a mechanism where, those that represent us are able to give us an account of what they've done in the past? Therefore, citizens are therefore happy to vote back or vote you into office. The answer is, may not necessarily be true. I mean, the reason we are here is because the state of the nation is such that citizens are so hungry and there is too much of poverty, and the only time citizens get to benefit from the democracy in the short term, which of course has an impact into the future of our nation, is that they just have to sell their vote. And this is why we say that everybody needs to come out here. We need to advocate for a good governance. We need to advocate for, citizens to realize that the only power they have to change the course of the future, to bring back sanity into our country, to at least ensure that our common future is guaranteed, is by putting their thumb and voting the right person into governance position. And that's the only way we will be able to hold our leader into account, by making sure our voice counts during election.
All right, Engineer Ahmed Rufai, let me ask this. Of course, at a time like this, it is very normal for INEC to remind politicians and political parties and even the voters themselves of their responsibilities towards the election and conduct. But when it comes to prosecution of electoral offenders that INEC has been given powers, do you think INEC has the capacity to carry this out to the latter?
Well, first of all, let me address an issue that Mr. Laura, you mentioned. With respect to the structures that I mentioned, yes, apart from the structure, we have the content, in the sense that our leader, both leaders, like I mentioned, they have antecedents. They've shown capacity, while they were at the helms of affairs. And the legacy lives up to today and is going to live till tomorrow. So the Eco Atlantic and the Blue Line, and also the IGR in Lagos are easy references. When you go to Borno, despite the challenges, Kashim Shettima is a governor that stood out, while amongst his peers while he was in charge in Borno, and he replaced himself with somebody too that carried on, on his achievements in the name of His Excellency Governor Zulu. Now, with respect to prosecution of the electoral offenses, actually, it's not directly the responsibility of INEC, to prosecute, because we already have institutions, that are supposed to undertake the prosecution. The Nigerian police, they're there. The ICPC, they're there. The Code of Conduct Bureau, they're there. And also the EFCC, are also there. So, but INEC, that's, in the Act too, there is an organ that is supposed to be in place to prosecute electoral offenders. I don't know if that is already instituted. However, the key issue is to actually the issue of civic education, which I know that the INEC also have a department for that. For the voters to know that if you sell your conscience, you are selling the future of good governance, and you are establishing the foundation of corruption. Because if somebody buys his way into power, he would try to, it's an investment, for which he will try to recoup. And at the end of the day, it will be at the expense of delivering good education, at the expense of delivering hospital system, at the expense of delivering good infrastructures, roads and other dividends of democracy. So the Nigerian nation, the voters, needs to know this very well, that they should vote for somebody that they can trust. They can put the trust of the nation in their hands and go and sleep. And they can go and sleep and ensure that in future their children will grow up to meet a better Nigeria. We that were even alive now in the present, we want to enjoy Nigeria the way we enjoy places outside. And we know that our candidates, both of them, are much more brilliant than leaders of other nations, and we know that they can do it. So there is need for a lot of civic education, and there is also need, for the Nigerian police, to be at alert and arrest anybody, that is caught, violating the law at the polling units. And of course, that the EFCC during the primaries, they were present, and they were, they put their torchlight. They were very vigilant during the primaries of various political parties. So This needs to be encouraged, and this needs to be strengthened. And also the Electoral Acts Tribunal that's supposed to be put in place will also be instituted very quickly so that offenders can be tried and justice can be dispensed as quickly as possible. Because once there is
we need to go on a commercial
break.
break.
Be careful.
All right, we need to quickly go on a commercial break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we were speaking with our guest, Engineer Timasaniyo Ahmed Rufai, who is in our studio, and via Zoom we're speaking with Olariwaju Sharafa on INEC's stance on vote buying. And I'll come to you now, Olariwaju. Earlier, before we went on the break, our guest in the studio, our Abuja studio, Ahmed Rufai, spoke about the matter of trust. Now, one aspect when you hear citizens who sell their votes, one thing they say is that this is the opportunity for them to get something from these politicians that afterwards they don't see them again. And so they would want to sell their votes and collect the monies and all of that. They do not seem to trust these politicians. How do we begin to engender trust for our politicians, and also perhaps the politicians delivering on their promises? But then the focus is on building trust, which is a key matter with regards to what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica. You remember I said earlier on that the basis of power is governance, or the basis of ownership is power in governance. And the question is, if you want to hold leaders to account and you want to trust them, then the process of putting them in the office must be transparent. You must not ask somebody to give an account of what you don't own, or you cannot ask somebody to give an account of what you don't own. So the implication of selling your vote is that you're going to lose trust from these people or from those who are charged with governance responsibility. Nobody will give you an account of what you don't own. You cannot stop a car that is driving past you and say, excuse me, tell me about this car, because you don't own it. So every time citizens sell their vote, they lose the trust. The only time you can hold leaders to account and you can ask them for them to give you a steward of what you've entrusted in their capacity is when you actually vote them in without selling your vote. And the only way we can, get trust in governance is when we ensure that we don't sell our vote. We can hold them to account. We know that every 4 years we can say, hang on a minute, can you give me the report, or can you give me a steward of what you've done for 4 years? And if we trust them, we vote them in back. If we don't trust them, we vote them out. So the only way we can talk about trust is to make sure that we strengthen our democracy. We ensure that our electoral system is working. We ensure that we can hold our leaders to account. We tackle the problem of poverty and make sure that issues around stomach infrastructure is addressed so that citizens, and of course, good orientation to ordinary citizen who doesn't understand the meaning of selling their vote, or who doesn't understand that when they sell their vote, they more or less mortgage their future. Now, it is until when we are able to solve this problem, that's the only time we can hold our leaders to account. If we cannot hold our leaders to account, we cannot talk about trust in governance.
All right, let me bring Engineer Ahmed Rufai here. When it comes to stamping out vote buying, a lot of enlightenment is needed here. And these are communications that have been held by INEC is doing that right now. Few NGOs have also carried out enlightenment campaign. But how effective, what can make this enlightenment that effective to the level where Nigerians actually understand the implications of selling their votes, and also getting to the level where they can live above it?
Sorry, please, can you come back with the question? I need to hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you confirm that you can hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm talking about enlightenment and communication. What kind of communication should we be giving out to Nigerians for them to really understand the implications and all the dangers of selling their votes? Can you hear me? I guess the line is breaking. You can't hear me very well. Are you there? Engineer Ahmed Rufai, are you there? I guess we're losing the line there, but we hope to have him back on. Let me throw this question to you, Olanrewaju. The point there is communication is very key in all of this, getting people on board to be on the same page when it comes to moving on to having an enlightened mindset against practices that will thwart the election process. Talk to us, how differently should we be communicating to Nigerians to be aware of the dangers of vote buying?
Thank you so much, Mike. And earlier when I joined you, I pay a huge tribute to yourself and your team for helping us to sustain democracy in Nigeria. And that comes back to your question, or that answers your question. The role the media plays when it comes to enlightening the citizen is very key and paramount, especially at this time when election is approaching. Now is time when citizens needs to move away from fake news, and even celebrities should help us to campaign and, of course, put this information to ordinary citizens. Now it's time for NGOs. Now it's time for organizations, institutions like the National Orientation Agency I spoke about earlier, to start to, get to work by orienting people, individual citizens, even some of us in diaspora. We need to play our part. We need to start to orient people. And this is even the time for us as, ordinary Nigerians to even bring support for people, NGOs, now reach out in whatever means or form or shape. And that's why I respect some, celebrities who have dedicated their lives into, helping to sustain democracy in Nigeria. They should continue to do that, help to, use their voice and push this message across. And of course, our governors, our senators, our reps, and local government chairmen should take this campaign to, grassroots. The market men and women should at least orient their marketers to let them know that, look, you should not sell your vote. When you sell your vote, you mortgage the future of your children. It is only these ways that we can, of course, get to where we are going, not by threatening to sanction, not by threatening to jail, or by threatening to fine someone. If you approach governance from a rule-based approach, you are likely not to get a significant result.
Now, in clear terms, what are the implications of vote buying on our nascent democracy?
Well, Veronica, the implication is huge. We're going to continue to experience corruption. You're going to see corruption continue to grow very high because, of course, those who bought this vote will have to recoup their investment. So corruption will continue to be very high. Political instability, inflation, you're going to continue to see high rates of crime. You're going to see kidnapping because of the state of the nation. You're going to see situations where everything is collapsing. Nothing is going to work. And technically speaking, what you're calling for, if you continue to buy vote, what you're calling for is poor governance. And every one of us can imagine the implication of poor governance. I suppose we should rather push for good governance where democracy is sustained, where legitimacy of government is, something that is validated by citizens, where, of course, leaders can give account of their steward, where, of course, citizens can go to bed, where we can see development, where we can see that things are going as we expect as citizens. So the implication of vote buying has a multiplier effect, and we cannot, but of course, stamp this out in the 2023 election by all means, by making sure that even people like us in diaspora, we put our voice to ensure that these can be an issue of the past.
All right, Engineer Ahmed Rufai, I believe you're back now. I heard your voice earlier on. Let me ask generally, still talking about communication, the role that social media and technology plays in communication. Can you let us know how we can use this and use it rightly?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think this is where I felt so bad when I read some things in the social media, because some people have decided now to push the wrong narratives into the public space, you know, and you know, there is a clear effort by some group of individuals, both home and abroad, to obfuscate, you know, the facts on ground. Because normally, when you want to sell a candidate, there must be a reference point, there must be a case study, there must be antecedents, you know, of that candidate. As a student of Harvard Business School, for every topic, there's a clear case study, you know, that is used, you know, as a guide to a particular subject matter. Now, if we take our candidate, for instance, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also the Vice President, we take Lagos first. There's a clear case of performance, you know, from 1999 when he was at the helms of. Yes, you know, I happen to live in Lagos, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. If you take Eco Atlantic, was the one that, you know, set up the foundation. The blue line that we have now, it was the one that set up the foundation. The IGR from 600 million per month to 50 billion per month. These are all practical examples. And what about the men that he has made? You know, most of his proteges, you know, including the vice president, he was seen, you know, and evaluated fit enough to be the vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He didn't buy his way into that position. He was evaluated and accepted, and this was somebody that our principal brought up, you know, when he appointed him as the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice at that time. Okay, what about Fashola, who was given three important ministries in 2015 at the beginning of this administration? You know, when he took over, he was formerly the Chief of Staff to our principal, and when he took over, you know, from him, he also made his mark in Lagos for the 2 terms that he served. If you are, you know, if you go to Lagos at that time, Lagos was a garden city as against Port Harcourt. You see what he has done and how he was able to reduce crime and employ most of these people, you know, to take care of these gardens, and so many other achievements that he too made. He made this mark, which led consequently for the federal government at that time, while this cabinet was put together, to be given power works and housing. You know, so also you have the Minister of Communication, also, who is also you know, Laya Muhammad, who also, you know, made this mark as an honorable minister, and so many other people in this cabinet. And these are all people that our leader brought up. You know, and when you want to make a change, it is the quality of men, you know, that forms your team that matters. So these are the issues, the right narratives that the social media, you know, and the general communications, the real media, the main media, and the print media, that should put to the public. We are looking at, you know, presidential candidates, maybe about 21 of them. Let's put the CV, everybody's CV, you know, behind him, and let the voters, you know, choose freely. All right. Because I know that if that is done, none of them will even score 5% of what our own leader, you know, has been able to achieve. And let me quickly say that Lagos, in terms of economy, is about 60% of Nigeria.
Okay,
so somebody
Engineer Ahmed Rufai, for want of time, we need to, we need to quickly go to our next guest so that we can manage the time appropriately. All right, so Olariwaju, let me quickly bring this question to you because we are about to wrap up this discussion now. 2023 is here. What do you think would shape that elections, and how should electorates go about this election by way of advice?
Well, you see, Nigerians, we think too much about the outcome of election and how it impacts our lives and what we intend to achieve for ourselves in the new year. But for me, as a professional, and I want to employ citizens to please look beyond the election, because regardless of the outcome, regardless of the winner of this election, we're going to experience political instability. And I know the reason I say this. If you have the ruling party emerge the winner, there will be instability because of the likelihood of change of policies and approach and all that, because people are saying don't continue some strategy or some policy. If you have the opposition party win, we're going to also see massive political instability. So what we can see as an outcome of this election is that it's going to change. A lot of things will change for us in 2023 as Nigerians. But what is important for us as professionals is to go about our daily lives without thinking about how the governance of those who emerge will affect our aspirations. We should stop seeking permission. We should, of course, know that for us to succeed, nobody needs to give you permission to succeed. We have to prioritize the priorities, making sure that you can prioritize your purpose, your money, your freedom, and your health. You should embrace opportunities with humility and open-minded. You have to confront adversity with gratitude and some level of spirituality, because, of course, some things might go wrong in 2023. And lastly, you have to be disciplined, and you should be courageous to at least make sure that you can seek next level for yourself, regardless of the outcome. Thank you so much.
All right, Engineer Dimas, your final word on this.
Well, my final word is to appeal to the 94 voting populace of the entire country to realize that we have two candidates, Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima, that by the special grace of God, they've given the mandate, will bring to the table a renewed hope, in the sense that this country is highly blessed, and we need people, that will definitely put all these blessings into deliverables to Nigeria. This government has already started, and so much has been done, but very little is hard. So much has been done. So by the special grace of God, the incoming administration will consolidate on what has been achieved, and this country definitely will be a place of pride for every Nigerian. I'm hoping that this election, will be different. It will be an election like no other. We are hoping that our principal will be coming home with about 40 million votes, while the rest can share the remaining 10 million.
All right. We have to leave the conversation here now. We must thank you, DG Tinubu Shettima Vanguard, Engineer Dimas Ahmed Rufai, as well as Chartered Accountant and Corporate Governance Professional, Olariwaju Sharafa, for your time on the program.
Thank you.